This very short list is only my favourite features and techniques on Photoshop, and I'm sure you're going to have your own favourite features that aren't the same as mine. Everyone will have their own best thing, as Photoshop is such a big program with some seriously awesome features. What I'm listing is just the things I think is really cool. You might love them, or you might hate them, I don't know. Now with that disclaimer out the way, let's get to it, shall we? Oh, and I'm going to skip this feature right here. Because, yeah, this is everyone's favourite feature. If only life had this, eh? So, in my last video, and a link to that video will be in the descriptions if you'd like to check that one out, I listed just 3 of the features that I personally like to use in Photoshop. And I'm really not sure that I went that much in depth with them. I was more concerned with making it a more simplified version of the digital art process, rather than relying upon all these features. Also, with my favourite features here, I'm pretty certain that they are not just exclusive to Photoshop, but do I care? Nah. These are just going to be about what I think is really neat with Photoshop. So, with all that said, here we go! Here are my top 5 features in Photoshop. The Liquify tool. If you've ever watched my time-lapse videos, you might have noticed me using this quite a lot. Oh, what does it do? It turns things to liquid. Not really, but it is a useful tool. It basically allows you to morph the shape of the image. You can enlarge areas, shrink areas, or just move it in the direction of your choosing. So you can sort of bulk things out, squish things, all of that kind of stuff. So why is this so useful? I make quite a few mistakes in my art, as do we all, I'm sure, but this allowed me to correct those mistakes with the where the Ctrl-Z can't. It is particularly useful in my time-lapse videos. I rush a lot for those videos as I try to make those pieces as quickly as possible within just 1 hour, so having the Liquify tool allow me to morph and shape a character's facial features without constantly backtracking is very helpful. The only problem with this tool is that it can distort or bend some of the textures of the art, so that it has to be done in moderation, I'd say. It also can't be used on multiple layers, at least to my knowledge. If someone knows how to do that, then please say, I'd love to know. Adjustments. I don't use this tool very often, and it is a very basic tool, but a very helpful one at that. It may seem simple at first, but offers a wide array of features, from changing the saturation, brightness, vibrancy, all via a simple slider. It is very good when you're partway through your art and you just want to increase the brightness of the art by just a tiny little bit. You can also select specific colours such as yellows, or playing around with the individual saturation of those colours. I don't know what to call this one. Maybe noise, film grain. Either way, if you watched my previous video, I mentioned this already, but essentially if you click filter and click noise and add noise, you can create a sort of film grain effect. I usually do this at the very end of a piece of artwork on a separate layer over the top of it all. I'm passively set to about 40. It essentially mimics the effects you would get in a film with a really filmy grain, and it's pretty good as it adds in some sort of like fake details, I like to call it. It just gives you that art, the sort of extra little polish. Though I can imagine it wouldn't really work well for certain styles, and I'm sure most people wouldn't even notice the effect. A tie-on to this effect is using some sort of textured photo bashing. So, if you don't know what photo bashing is, it's basically something similar to a collage. You can take an already existing image and overlay it over your artwork. Now, you can really go into depth with this and make a full-on collage, but with photo bashing the goal is to try and hide the photos in plain sight. I don't usually use this approach, but I have used it to quickly get a texture down on pieces. One texture I recommend is searching for Elaskin skin online, as the images for their wrinkled skin can very easily replicate leather, or as a nice texture for over all of the artwork. Brushes. This is such a good feature of Photoshop and other forms of digital art. I think Photoshop does have a much wider variety of brushes that other apps don't. I don't know if this is simply due to Photoshop being around longer, or being considered the industry standard for digital art, but you can find hundreds of ready-to-download art brushes off the web. I personally like finding ones used or created by other artists rather than just general websites, but even the ones on general websites have a great selection. I personally use a wide variety of brushes, both free and paid for by artists. A few amazing brush packs I'd recommend is by other artists such as Joy of Jazz's pack and Anato Finstark's pack. These are paid ones, but are exceptionally good, and I regularly use a few of these selections in my art pieces myself. I haven't been using this feature that long, but this has proved exceptionally useful. This is perhaps one of the best features that Photoshop has, and it's not even that well known, I think, but it's fairly complicated. So with the Mixer brush tool, you can actually create repeated patterns on a line wherever you fancy drawing. This is extremely useful as you can create repeated patterns like horns, beads and jewellery in a line. Essentially you just hold Alt and click over the part of the drawing that you want to copy and then draw. The main trick is making sure that in the brush settings your brush has some spacing to create the patterns, like this. I used to use this brush type in a very different way in the past, where instead of using Alt click, I make sure the brush was clean and drag the brush over various parts of the artwork to blend things together. This can work depending on your style. I used to try and go for a very smooth looking art style in the past, which I hate now and I don't really use that technique anymore, but I thought it'd be good to mention it all the same. So, those are my top 5 features in Photoshop. I hope you've learned something new here, and maybe these might have helped you out with your art too, or at least been entertaining if not. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you could, don't forget to subscribe, ring the bell, like the video and all that good stuff. If you didn't know, these things really help push out the video so that other people like you can find this video, and maybe even get help from it just like you did. So I think it's time I end the video, right? I'll end it right now.